There's a connection from psychology to engineering to agile and how all of that can come together to really do some powerful change engineering. Engineering can give us a language to explain that in a way of input, processing, and output, like systems, where we can then say, when you input something into a system, this is how it changes, and this is the output you get. It's an oversimplification in a way, but it really gives you the language to then think about what do we need to change in the inputs to actually get a different output. In change, we often sometimes do the same things and then don't get the outcome we want. If we take a step back, think about it as systems, think from an engineering perspective, we might be able to change the way that we approach it and end up with better results.
Welcome to Change Leadership Conversations, where we dive into what it takes to lead change in today's disruptive and fast-paced world. I'm Yvonne Ruke Akpoveta, the founder of the Change Leadership. We create change leadership workshops, content, courses, and community. Today's guest brings a rare and powerful blend of science, soul, and systems thinking to how we lead change. I'm thrilled to be joined by Rehana Rajwani. She has led enterprise-wide Agile Learning and Transformation across complex organizations, including BMO, Bank of Montreal. Today, she's on a mission to reframe how we think about change through the lenses of organizational physics. We also explore how feedback loops, momentum, AI, and agile thinking can all play a role in building capability and creating change that sticks. I invite you to hit the follow button and stay connected with our Change Leadership community. Rehana, welcome to the Change Leadership Conversations. It's great to have you on. And it's great to be having a conversation with you today. You've been part of our community for the last couple of years. You spoke at the Change Leadership Conference. And I remember the first time I met you, I was fascinated by your passion topic, which is all around organizational physics. I was like, organizational physics? I want to hear all about that. And we're going to go into that a second.
It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the last few years and being at the conferences. And I'm looking forward to the 10-year anniversary next year. I'll be there for sure. And honestly, I found a friend in you. So it's been so lovely chatting about things, brainstorming together. And I'm definitely looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you. Rehana, when we look at your background, you have a fascinating background. And we want to start with your story. It cuts across engineering, agile coaching, leadership development. So tell us, how have you gotten to where you are now? What's the story?
See, so this is like therapy now, okay? I'm going to start with my childhood. So when I was 10, my dad brought home a book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
I know it!
Right? Okay.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors.
He is. I've read all his books and he talks about the subconscious mind in it. And that just really got me intrigued about how the mind works, how that applies to organizations. And cut to a few years later when I had to decide my career, engineering felt like the best fit because it wasn't as confining like medicine to the sciences. So it still had sciences in it, but it also wasn't a complete step away from STEM, right? Where I went to complete business because those were really the three options back home in Pakistan at the time. So I said, let's go midway. I've always been one of the ones that brings two sides together. So I said, let's keep the sciences and let's keep some of the economics and accounting and all that together. And that led me to engineering as a field of study. And then when I entered it, I realized I entered into the workforce. And then there was this gap around leadership and understanding change management and how fast or slow sometimes we do things with employees, with customers. And that just broadened my scope to agile as well. And I said, oh my God, there's a connection here. There's a connection from psychology to engineering to agile and how all of that can come together to really do some powerful change engineering.
Change engineering, that's like a whole new word now. Lord, you got me into organizational physics. Now you're getting me into change engineering.
Let's do it.
Oh gosh. Okay. How would you describe change engineering? So I want to say I heard change engineering first here. Let's put it in the universe. What's your description on change engineering?
I love it. Engineering is a very predictable scope of study. We're trying to define things by laws. We're trying to have X plus Y equals Z. It defines a system, a way to think about things. Often when we think about change, it's hard, it's unpredictable, it's confusing. And engineering can give us a language to explain that in a way of input, processing, and output, like systems, where we can then say, when you input something into a system, this is how it changes, and this is the output you get. It's an oversimplification in a way, but it really gives you the language to then think about, what do we need to change in the inputs to actually get a different output? There's a misquoted quote to either it's Einstein or one of those famous scientists where they say that if you keep doing the same thing and you expect a different result, that's what stupidity is, right? I feel like in change, we often sometimes do the same things and then don't get the outcome we want. If we take a step back, think about it as systems, think from an engineering perspective, we might be able to change the way that we approach it and end up with better results.
I love what it is you're saying, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit, but let me tell you what I love about what it is you've just said. First of all, the challenge is human beings are unpredictable, change is unpredictable.
Yeah.
Right now, we're going through changes that we would never have imagined in the
Yeah.
universe. There's just so much going on, social, politically, technology wise, human wise, economy, so much is happening. So change is unpredictable. So that's that first bit. So that's where I'll challenge change engineering to say that if you put something in, doesn't necessarily mean it to be something out. But what I love about what you've just said is that truly in human nature, which change is about, if you look at it as a systems approach, if you take a certain approach to doing things, whether if you say, I'm going to take a lens of collaboration, whether you say, I'm going to take a lens of empathy, whether you say,
Yeah.
I'm going to be more emotionally intelligent, standard change leadership skills that we teach on.
Yeah.
So those are inputs that can
Yeah.
drive a certain type of behavior. I had on my podcast that Adam Kahane collaborating with the enemy, and we're talking about collaboration. You're not going to always get certain outcomes when you do certain things because we're human by nature. Change is uncertain, but you can guide and drive and shape some of the outcomes when you put in some of the key basic and principles of what it means to lead change, whether it's how we communicate, how we listen to people, how we put people at the center of the change, all of those beautiful things. We need to talk more about change engineering.
We do. So let me add this to the definition. We've always been in a world of unprecedented change. From the time when humans were maybe walking around to when they discovered they could use horses or other animals to travel,
Yes,
when they realized ships could be a thing and cars could be
yes.
a thing and then airplanes could be a thing. I think I'm a strong believer in the only constant is change. Change is always happening around us, and 99% of the time we can't predict it. I mean, we can't even predict the weather.
Change is not new.
No,
Maybe what is new is the speed.
exactly. I was just going to say that. You read my mind. It's the pace of change that has evolved, how fast we all get to know about it because the digital world that we live in, right? Because back
Hmm.
in the day, something could be changing in North America and someone in South Asia would have no clue, or they would
Yeah.
find out a year later, right? But it eventually maybe impacted them. Now we find out about it way faster as well. And the tool itself is also moving faster. So I find that changes the dynamic of our inputs. And
Mhm.
then that unpredictability almost becomes irrelevant because it's changing so fast that you don't have time to predict. You only have time to respond, hopefully, and
Mhm.
not react. So you've already thought of hopefully some systems, some processes that you're going to use, some frameworks that will help you understand that change and then respond to it in an effective way.
When we think about the pandemic and how people say react versus respond, just thinking back to it, nobody expected the pandemic. Nobody
Yeah.
expected suddenly you're going to be told in a second that you're working from home. Because I literally remember going into a client site on a Monday, and the next thing, Tuesday, it was like, work from home and everything that was in the office was in the office.
Oh,
There was no chance to go back into the office and
no,
get it.
no, no, no.
And
You
some
left your stuff there.
organizations were able to respond quicker. And that was just by benefit of having a disaster recovery plan. So
Yeah.
those were organizations who were prepared to respond to change. And some organizations weren't able to respond. Again, we're using the word respond because they had never been prepared should something like this come. So even when you think about the standard disaster recovery plans organizations had, it was always about preparing for change to be responsive, as opposed to waiting for the unexpected change to come. And then now you're reacting and you can't even catch
Exactly.
up. And that's where there's more disaster happening. So I want to take us to organizational physics, which is something
Okay.
that you love. And
So much.
it's very close
So
to
much.
your heart. And I just love the whole concept of it when it comes to leading change. For many listeners who may not be familiar with it, what does that mean? What is organizational physics? And how has that influenced your approach to how you lead and drive change? Tell us more about it.
Thank you for asking because I love organizational physics so much that I've started to write a book on it and hopefully it'll come out by the time this podcast is out. I am so excited about the idea of applying physics to organizational behavior, individuals to psychology. I think there's such power in analogies. I'll give you an example, right? Think about feedback. We know in change leadership, in leadership, there is such importance placed on giving and receiving feedback. That concept of feedback actually is so strongly present in physics. When we have these electrical circuits, any system really in physics often has a feedback loop where the
Mm,
system understands if it needs to do more of something or less of something in order to stay stable and productive. So I
okay.
think there's a strong analogy there between us as leaders, us as organizations, where we need to have that feedback loop and actually respond to it. So feedback loop is always closed. A closed feedback loop means you get the feedback, you analyze it, and then you act on it. And then you get feedback again. It's a closed loop. When you open up that loop, you've broken it. So you're no longer acting on it, or you're no longer analyzing it, or you're not
Mm,
coming back and asking for feedback again based on the changes that you've made. That's what I find is such a common issue in a lot of organizations, but really a lot of people, right? We don't really. What was the last time we asked for feedback from our spouse or
mm,
from our child or from our coworker? In organizations, I still think people try, there's a lot of people in culture teams that try to embed the culture of feedback in organizations. But I think as humans in general, when someone comes to you and says, hey, we should talk about something, or here's something that I think you could do better, we default to a flight or fight response.
mhm.
Our amygdala just lightens up and says, threat, instead of, ooh, opportunity. There's just so much that we can learn from physics, but this is one example where there's feedback loops in physics, and they teach us so much about the importance of feedback loops in life, in organizations, where we can continue to do more, do better, especially in today's world where the pace of change is so fast that you need to understand the impact of your work. You need to
Mm.
understand, are you touching that customer in the right way? Is your employee engaged in the right way? And you won't know any of that until you have that feedback loop where the person can come in and tell you.
That's fantastic. And that's even a new angle that I'm hearing from you when it comes to organizational physics. And I love it. Staying a bit on the feedback loop, one of the things I wanted to say was I love what you mean about the feedback loop is broken when you don't act on it. Sometimes it's not the lack of feedback, it's the lack of us not acting on that feedback
Action.
when we
Yeah.
receive it, the action, and then it just breaks everything completely. So thanks for sharing that. Let's talk from a leading change perspective, especially when we talk about building organizational capabilities when it comes to how we lead and drive change.
That's such a good point. I think that's where the concept of momentum comes in.
Mm,
I find that we use the term momentum pretty loosely generally, and we talk about it as velocity or speed. When we often hear the word in normal language or in business terms, we say, keep the momentum going. Let's not lose momentum. Oh,
mm.
I know two people are sick on the team, but let's focus. Let's not lose momentum. And often people by momentum mean we got to finish this stuff in the time that
It's
we
just
said we
another
would.
word for saying, let's get on with it and have it done. We still have deadlines to meet.
Exactly. So two people down, the two who are left do double the work. So in physics, the definition of momentum is actually mass multiplied by velocity. And really, if I think about it, it's a way to quantify this oomph factor, right? Like it's how many people are on the team, how much work are they doing? When you multiply it, you get this interesting characteristic of a team that's called momentum, right? And what I've learned in my own study of physics is that momentum will not change unless an external force acts on it. So when you reduce the number of people on the team, or even when you add, you will not change the velocity, which is the amount of work that team is producing, because that interesting characteristic that we described earlier does not just change because you change number of people. And I think often leaders make that mistake where they say, ooh, deadline is close. Great. Let's add 5 more people who are amazing, super fantastic talent. Let's bring them on and they will be saving the day. In general, I'm not a fan of the save the day culture, but in physics language as well, that does not work because this characteristic of momentum, physics laws won't let you until you apply this external force. And so you might ask me, Rehana, great, but then what is this external force? Well, today we have so many options. We have tools and technology. You can upskill your team. You can think about how you're going to maybe change the scope of the work that you're doing, right? And recommit to a different deadline, maybe. If timeline cannot change, then scope should be able to. If scope can't, what's missing today? Are you able to upskill those people? Are you able to change the direction of the work? Because momentum is actually not a linear property, it has direction. That's why setting goals can be so important. So, as a leader, you have to think about being very, very clear on your goals of what you're doing, why is this change or transformation happening, how you're going to measure success, and then the people on that team, do they really have everything that they need to be successful? Now, will adding a person in at some point make sense? Sure. Maybe that is your external factor that will bring in more work, more momentum, sorry. But that never, ever, almost ever works in the short term. And that's the thing to remember, that momentum will normally increase with time. If you give it enough time and you apply that force consistently, yes, momentum will increase. But in the short term, you always have to think and be creative with different solutions.
I like that you brought in the aspect of, yes, sometimes you do need that new team member. You do need that additional body. Let's call a spade a spade. There are times that you will need it. And on the flip side, let's also be realistic to the fact that there's always a limit to how much people you can bring in, whether it be for budget reasons, whether it be the fact we're letting go of people so we can't even bring in more people. So
And finding the right skill set, right? You
finding the
might not
right
find
skill set. So there are limitations. I like what you talk about when you say the external forces, and maybe that's what we're not paying attention to. And that's what I loved about your concept about organizational physics is how we're applying those external forces to help with the existing capacity we have. Because one of the things we do when we train organizations is we were doing it without even realizing we're doing organizational physics is we're helping them build their existing capabilities. We're saying that for your existing team members, how are you helping them become better change leaders? For your existing resources, how are you applying those external forces? Let's jump into a bit of what role AI plays, because AI, would you agree with me, is an external force right now that is playing a huge role?
100%. 100%. If there's anybody out there who's listening to us who hasn't already tried Copilot or ChatGPT, you're already behind. It's one of those things where I think until yesterday, I'm hearing people say AI is the future, and I'm like, no, it's the present. It's already here. We're already in it. And if you haven't already tried to improve even a personal aspect of your life with it, you are already behind. And so, no pressure, but AI is a big force right now in a good way. Can it do evil? Yeah. And so can cars, and so can planes, and so can every piece of technology we've ever
Exactly.
invented. But it's our job as humans to do good with it. It's our
Yes.
job as intellectual beings of this planet and universe to find the good and use it for betterment of humanity. I think AI will really enable and augment us to do more, solve bigger, better problems. But at the same time, I always tell people, listen, it's not always about the bigger, better problems. Not all of us can be big entrepreneurs trying to solve a huge, maybe just eliminate global poverty. But what we all can do is look for that small problem around us that we can solve and we have the skill set to solve. And whatever that problem is that you found out in your life, I'm relatively sure 99% that AI can help you with it. Even if it's having a conflict resolution conversation
Oh,
with
yes,
your
it is.
manager.
I don't think I could function without AI right now
There you
as a
go.
thinking partner. It just saves me tremendous amounts of time. I kid
Yes.
you not. When I do my prayers and I say in gratitude, and I say what I'm thankful for, I am thankful for the power of AI. If I'm being a little bit transparent, I do feel a little scared of it sometimes because when you see the power of it, it feels a little scary when you think about the damage people can do with AI because of how powerful it is. But I just so loved how you just said it, even with planes, even with cars, even with every other thing that has been invented in the past, people have done evil with it. And at the same time, so much good has come out of it. So, in your current role, leading the Agile Center of Excellence as part of your responsibilities, how are you driving enterprise wide learning when it comes to being able to lead and drive change, the change mindsets, the introduction of new tools to help people do work better?
We try to keep it human, right? So I lead the learning and development function for Enterprise Agile. And one of the most important things we do as part of it is staying connected to our audience through things like office hours or ask me anything sessions or live learning sessions where
Mm,
they can come in and they can challenge us and we
mm,
can be vulnerable and we can say, you know what, that's a problem we haven't solved for yet, and that's okay. Maybe we can solve it together, or maybe it's just not top of priority because we've got X, Y, and Z that we're working on.
mm,
Keeping that open dialogue, and it takes me back to my feedback conversation earlier,
mm,
is what builds trust. And when you have that trust, people will come along on the journey. They will do the transformation. And then, of course, there's the what's in it for me, right? The WIFM terminology that's so famous in the change and transformation world. You have to articulate that for them. And if
mm,
you can't, have a conversation with them so they can articulate it for themselves. And that goes for any tool, technology, new process, new way of working, whatever it is that you're trying people to adopt or start working with. I'm actually pleasantly surprised by how candid, radically candid, and radically respectful people can be when they come
mm,
forward with their thoughts, with their ideas, when they know that you've got their best interest in your heart as
mm.
well. I think that's just so important.
Yeah, I like that you say keeping it human in an age where it's all tech, automation, AI, we're going that way. I love that balance of human, bringing in the human aspect, which is what we can bring in all the time, that human connection feel that people think outside of technology. How do you marry that with agile thinking? You're being human, but you want to say we need to be agile, we need to be quick, we need to be responsive to change, we need to move forward. Bring in the agile aspect now for how you're leading that agile thinking and those values and perspectives within the organization to say speed over like change fatigue.
That's such a good point. So it's interesting. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. I know that a lot of people know about her. And one thing that she made me realize through her work in her books and her podcast is as humans, we might want to start thinking away from or and move towards and.
Mm,
So can you have speed and change being done in an impactful way? Is there an opportunity for us to do two things that feel seemingly opposite, but bringing it together? So one of the values of Agile is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. If you're starting fresh, you have this opportunity, but even if you're not and you've been working with your customers for a while, often change will be received well if you've built that connection and trust with them on the go, always, not just on a quarterly basis, not just on an annual basis, but really live all the time, working with them in and out. So even when we think about Agile in a department like finance, which is not always software, they may have some software that they're working with, but they're not delivering software to the customer. How can they work more agile? Well, they can work with their line of business in a more regular partnership kind of way instead of only when they need to look at the financials at the end of the quarter for reporting. That way, they would understand the business context. They would understand why something was over or under budget. And instead of a difficult conversation at the end that everyone's really not looking forward to. It could be more of a, oh yeah, I understand what happened there. And then the line of the business also understands, I know from a finance perspective, this is going to be hard to report on, but here's what we're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again in the next quarter. So it's a much more collaborative partnership instead of a negotiative conversation. And who wants to be part of a negotiation when you could be part of something that's a collaboration?
Yes. What would you say is the biggest top of mind misconception when it comes to agile? When people hear the word agile in organizations, or what are you often faced with when you say, oh, we are doing agile leadership or agile thinking or agile processes? What's the first thing that you hear that is a misconception?
Can't believe you asked me that. People just assume they're going to get more and that they're not going to have to put in any effort to get more, that things will be delivered faster. The funny thing is, with Agile, yes, you can deliver faster, but that's because you're relentlessly prioritizing and reducing scope. You're
Mhm.
trying to deliver less. And that's why when you deliver less, you end up delivering faster. You break it down into smaller pieces, and you might deliver the same amount of work in 5 releases because the first one goes out to market faster instead of one big bang. And that's sometimes the misconception, that people assume you will still have that one big release, and instead of doing it in a year, you'll be able to do it in 2 months because it's agile, it's faster. um, it's a huge misconception. And along with that, this idea that speed and quality are somehow directly proportional instead of inversely proportional. So, what I mean by that is, think about the last time you tried to do something at the pace that you were comfortable with versus faster. I know I've dropped coffee on myself when I've tried to rush out the door. And so, all of us have seen this in our lives where quality dips when you try to do something faster than what it was intended to be done at, right? At the speed or the velocity. And so I find that people sometimes then start risking quality because they don't really realize that in the attempt to move faster, they're actually making cuts instead of introducing the external forces like AI and automation to say, let's
Mm.
automate all the quality control. Can we do that? And then we can do some exploratory testing in a manual way. How can we make this process better so that we can actually do more with the same amount of resources, technological, human staff, whoever else, instead of just focusing on the speed or the pace? I also want to call out this distinction between speed and velocity because I think
Yeah.
people often they chase speed, which is basically, think about a car, you're driving 100 kilometers an hour. People forget about the direction and the importance of that. So in
Mm.
physics, velocity is defined as speed with direction. I
Mm.
think none of us are really chasing speed in reality. We're all chasing velocity, which means we want to move forward in a direction. And if you
Mm.
were moving in the wrong direction, you'd be moving very, very fast in the wrong direction if you were
Mm.
focusing on speed. So that's why those goals, those OKRs, those measurable outcomes become so important, because without those, whatever change you're trying to do, if you don't measure it properly, you're just doing it really fast and you might be doing it wrong, which probably will cause more detriment than not doing it at all.
You mentioned a few things that I'm picking up that I really like, because agile isn't just about saying we're going fast. It's about taking a step back and doing the work initially to prioritize, first of all, what we're focused on, because it's not about doing everything. It's sometimes about what's the most important thing to do right now to get us to where it is that we need to get to. So sometimes you're slicing down the work as opposed to trying to get people to do a 2 years amount of work in 2 months type of thing. It's also about setting those very clear goals, those very clear
Yeah.
outcomes. And also, what I'm hearing is also about what we said before, external force. Like, what are we bringing in to help us be more agile? What are we
Yes.
bringing in to be more effective? When we think about agile, what's the intersection of agile thinking or agile mindset with change leadership in your perspective?
I think they both really try hard to be customer centric and
Mm-hmm.
to really focus on that human who's going to be
Mm-hmm.
affected by the project, the change, or whatever's happening at the end of the day. Agile, when it first started, many thoughts there. There's 4 key values, 12 principles, but really it was about when we build something, is it actually useful to that end user? Or
Mm,
are we giving it to them so late that they don't need it anymore? Or
mm,
that it's not what they wanted in the first place because we didn't
mm,
test it with them enough? And I think change leadership is about that. It's about that employee or that customer who's going to get impacted by that change. How are we going to lead that in a way where they feel empowered and not
mm.
restricted by it? And I always say with great change comes great opportunity. There's like with great power comes great responsibility, which is why we say AI is powerful, and now responsible AI is the new word that everyone's talking about because we want it to be responsible. Just like that, with any change, there's tons of opportunity. And with that comes that important piece of leadership work where you
Mm.
have to make sure that your customer, your employee, anybody who's involved in that doesn't lose sight of the end goal, still feels like they're being treated like a human being and not just a number, not just a thing on the chart. And that particular experience for them is personal. It feels like they're empowered and that they can live that change and come out of it feeling more productive, more accomplished, and more respected, really.
Yeah, as soon as you started, I saw agile was change leadership equals human. Almost like neon lights just coming on.
It is what it is.
I'm going to throw a word at you. And when I throw that word or phrase at you, I want to see what comes to mind immediately. Adaptive change or adaptive change leadership.
Oh, oh,
I just put you on the spot.
you know what? So it's funny because I did another podcast interview with a friend of mine, and we were talking about why large organizations tend to struggle with measuring success.
Hmm.
And that was the only question we talked about. It was a 5 minute conversation. But I think the adaptive change piece is so relevant there
Mm.
because we go ahead and set OKRs, we set goals. And some organizations are better at that and some not so much. But sometimes organizations struggle with measuring it because they're not adaptive. Their
Mm.
environment has changed, but their goal hasn't. Their OKR hasn't. So think about it like this. When the internet came out and we were doing things digitally, if an organization was measuring productivity by the number of papers, physical papers that were being printed, because that's what shows how many contracts are being negotiated every year. Would that make sense anymore? Maybe not, because a lot of contracts may be being signed digitally and emails had started to become a thing. So if your OKR or your goal or your success metric doesn't adapt to the changing environment, then everything that you're doing in service of that goal is also not adapting.
Mm.
To me, that's the interesting thing about adapting change, because change is the constant, it's always happening. But how do you stay centered, have that pull of gravity, wink, wink, but also at the same time, you're understanding that the world around you is changing and you do need to move
Yes.
in that direction while keeping true to your center and your values, but you've got to adapt.
And that's a word, adapt, when we teach adaptive change leadership as a tool or as a skill that change leaders should have, it's usually about adapting to your environment, adapting to that change that is happening, adapting to the people that you're leading. We
Yeah.
usually are focused on the head, heart, and hand model as well. And why we say people are different. You have people who are very heart centric, people are very head centric, people are very hand centric. And how are you adapting your style of leadership even to when you're leading and driving people through change? What does that look like? And to a lot of what you've said, change is the constant. How are you adapting? How is your environment adapting? It's interesting. I heard something today. They used an example that I've spoken about and written about a number of times, which was the blockbuster versus the Netflix.
Oh yeah.
And you
Oh
know what? I have to give Blockbuster some room. They're no different from many of us. They had a model that was working.
well, yeah.
And they had a model that was working. With hindsight is 2020, right? So we can come back and say, hey, they should have done this. But at that time, they had a model that was working 100% for them. And we have been taught as human beings, what's one of those phrases they say, if you ain't broke, don't fix it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And as engineers, if I go in and I try to fix a machine that's not broken, people are going to say I'm out of my mind.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit on that. What role does that play still on adaptive leadership in your own experience of you're approaching people in the organization, you're telling them, let's do things a different way, you're trying to introduce new learning into your organization, and we're talking enterprise wide. And people may be looking and saying, this works already, Rehana. Why are you introducing this concept? Why should we be doing that? How do you introduce change as an enterprise leader into the organization when they don't even see the need for the change?
Before I even answer that question, let me give you the pretext here of Blockbuster and Netflix to now Google and OpenAI. So Google could have become the Blockbuster with its
Yes.
Google search function. The new generation, Gen Z, I don't hear them saying, I'm going to Google this. They say, I'm going to ChatGPT this. The language has changed. But
Mm,
are people still using Google to search? Yes, because Google has the AI function now where it provides the AI overview of all the search results. That's adaptive leadership, right? Google
yes.
did not sit there and say, no, but our algorithm works just fine and ChatGPT hallucinates. No, they went ahead and they brought the model on and they said, let's do this. Let's
Yes.
adapt. Let's take this in the direction that makes sense. And I think that's just so important in
I
today's
love the
world,
example of that
right?
example of adaptive change leadership, the willingness and the mindset to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to your question around enterprise change, I can give this to you in writing, Yvonne. There is not a single place that doesn't have something that's broken, something that needs to change, something that's a pain. And
Mm,
there's very few people who would rather live with the pain than experience change to actually fix it. And
mm,
so often all it takes is a deeper conversation about what's not working for you. I know that you've always done it this way. I know that this works. What doesn't work? Let's talk about that. And then let's talk about how change and transformation and agile can come in and help you with that. And once they've been okay with changing that thing that didn't work, they start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're like,
yes.
oh, we're converts. We get it. Now I want to bring it to this area because you know what? I know I thought it was working before, but actually it's broken as well. That
I love that example. Someone asked me the other day, they said, oh, how do you change someone's mindset? I said, it's really not about changing people's mindset. It's our responsibility as change leaders to see where they are at and change how it is, tailor our discussion to them, understand the what's in it for them, what's their focus, what's the most important thing to them right now. And everybody loves the concept of, you've said it already in our conversation today, what's in it for them. We're all innately a little selfish. Even that person who is going to say, I'm going to go volunteer my time to the homeless, or I'm going to go volunteer my time to do this, and they seem so magnanimous and so giving, they're getting a satisfaction out of it.
yeah,
It's feeding something in them.
yeah,
So if you angled that change or that service in a way that said to them, oh, you're going to get this satisfaction, you're going to be able to feed people, and people are going to be XYZ, and people are going to love this and this. You give them satisfaction and they're more willing to do it. Everybody has a what's in it for them.
100%. I mean, Phoebe in a Friends episode said it best to Joey, where Joey wouldn't agree that you do good things out of like selfishness, and she convinced him because he tried 10 different things, all for the good, for volunteering, and he felt so good after. And she
Mm.
said, that's it. There you go. You did it so you could have that feeling. And sometimes that's all you need as a leader to feel good about something you've done for your employees or for your customers, right?
And that's what drives some people into why they do what they want to do. I say to change managers or colleagues or change leaders all the time, we must be gluttons for punishment, right? We must be gluttons for punishment because why do we keep on doing this all the time? So going back to you being in that center of excellence and driving change in what you do, and we spoke a little bit already about AI and introducing AI into organization. That's a big thing right now. Like you said, AI is not the future, AI is now. Same way I like to say, we're no longer in the future of work, we are in the new world of work. We're experiencing what was future of work, we're living it right now. We are in that new world of work. And I dare say soon it's going to be, this is just the way we work, it's no longer new. What advice would you give to a leader who wants to start integrating AI into how they lead change, or how they can coach their teams, or how they can introduce AI into their organizations? The other day, I was listening to somebody and they said organizations are just throwing AI at people. They're not giving people the space to train on it. They're not giving people the space to integrate it into their organizations. It's just, hey, here's a tool, go learn how to use it. What are your thoughts on how you integrate such new technologies into the organization?
I'm going to maybe give a little bit of a unpopular response to this one.
Okay, go ahead.
When Facebook was launched, did Mark Zuckerberg go around teaching people how to use it? Did he create training videos and go out in person and reach out to people and sit down with them? No, people just learned.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Gmail, same with any other platforms that's really out there that people tend to use so popularly. Instagram, TikTok. We're in a world right now where something like technology is just moving so fast. We talked about the pace of change earlier, that if you start going the traditional route of, oh, and this is what I need to do, and this is how much time I need to give people to actually ensure they can use this technology perfectly, you're probably going to fall behind. Because what that would mean is you would not be able to give them that technology as fast as they should be receiving it. Now, am I saying there should be no thought given to that adaptation and support? No. I think the technology can be given out there for those who are self-learners, self-paced, faster in terms of their interests, maybe in learning technology, and they should be enabled right away. For those who need the help and support, the guidance should be there. They can get help from their peers. The organization can support them by providing tools that they can use, videos that they can watch, an office hour they can come to, whatever that support looks like. Maybe a Friday afternoon that they get to learn a certain thing or two about how to use AI better. But at the same time, we're living in a world where if we don't get technology on the tips of our hands right away, for the most part, we are already behind. As we said, that pace of change is really fast. So I think you can't be unthoughtful about it, but you
Mm-hmm.
also can't overthink it to a point of analysis paralysis. You have to marry the two and think about how can we give it to those who may not need as much handholding with it, and then how do we also provide enough support to those who do, so that we can bring them along on the journey and bring everybody on the same level playing field.
Yes, that just buttresses the point we spoke about when we say adaptive leadership, right? In terms of what you do, it's understanding that in change management 101, not one
Yeah,
size fits all. It's
exactly.
about understanding the fact that some people want it, they're going to get on board with it, and some people, hey, they need some time, they need some space, and there needs to be resources and learning, giving people the space. It's unfortunate that you find that there are some folks that would just say, oh, because it's easy for me to use and I was able to adapt very quickly, everybody should be able to use it because it's easy for them. They think it's easy for everybody. I use Instagram every day. Maybe I learn along the ways, but there are also loads of videos out there. And I also know some people that like, I'm too confused. I don't understand how that thing works. And they never end up using Instagram or using it to its full capacity. Everybody has different learning styles. And it's
Yeah,
important that when we roll out changes, that we are cognizant of who our audience is.
absolutely. And it's even also important, you and I share this definition of leadership where you're not a leader by having a particular title. You're a leader because of your attitude and your ability to bring about positive change. And so part of this equation is also on the employees, who shouldn't feel like something's being done to them. If they need the help, hopefully the organization has created that space where they can come and ask for help and they can say, this doesn't make sense to me. At the same time, I hope that they're also embracing the change in a way, because at the end of the day, the world is moving forward. If today you told me you would only use a calculator to make calculations and you wouldn't use the amazing things that you have on your computers, I'd be thinking twice about how productive you're going to be in your job. And
Yeah.
so I think there's also that facet of technology where I sometimes think we don't really have the choice that we did with things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. You could totally survive without learning those, but sometimes you have to learn to be more productive at your job, to be seen as a valuable member of the society, and to actually free up your time to do better things and more interesting things in work. So that angle is also often forgotten, where people might say, oh yeah, but I don't trust this technology. You might
Yeah.
not, but if your organization does, you might want to think about how can you go ahead and really just try.
And on the flip side, some leaders just need to allow their people to use technology, because you'd be
Oh, that
surprised.
too. 100%.
You'd be surprised. There's some leaders like, what are we using this? We don't need AI. You
Oh,
mentioned you'd be surprised that if there's anybody who hasn't used ChatGPT or Copilot or one form of it or the other, and there are people.
I know.
They are people. It will get there because we're so far ahead, or some of us are so far ahead in terms of how we use it and use it as part of our everyday work. There's some people who haven't even touched it.
I'm a realistic optimist. So I want to think and hope that people are embracing things and moving forward, but I know in reality that's often not the case. And also, I think we're all very well aware that AI is also not accessible today to everybody. Different parts of the world, not everybody has a device on their hands and at their disposal. Not everybody can actually access the power of the
Exactly.
internet.
There is still that limitation that we need to be aware of. And even some of us who may be technology forward, we need to talk with empathy. We need to
Yes,
have that empathy mindset, because we're so far ahead in what we're doing that we don't realize that there may be people who are not yet where we are. And sometimes it's not a matter of because they don't want to, they don't even
no,
have the ability. So empathy, it works every other way, and it's important as a tool as change leaders. As I round up, the final two questions I love to ask all of my guests, and I'm asking at the moment, is we've spoken about it, change is happening. We've spoken about velocity, we've spoken about speed, we've spoken about all of those things. Change is happening at unprecedented levels. I can't even think of what change is going to be like in another 10 years. But right now, unprecedented levels of change, disruption, uncertainty, socioeconomic issues. There's so much going on right now. On a personal level, you now, how are you feeling about the current state of the world?
I have good days and bad days, but I'll repeat, I'm a realistic optimist. I always feel that with great change comes great opportunity. There is so much good that can be done with all the tools and technology that we have on our hand today. I have hope that people will come back to grounded values that we all share as humanity, and we will use our skills and our tools for good. If there are people doing evil, we will outweigh that and we will outdo them, and we will use technology for the better, because hope is what keeps us alive. You could say that I've got my blinders on and I'm moving forward, but sometimes that's the way to survive and not get bogged down in some of the horrific things that are happening in the world today. So I have my good days and bad days, but realistically optimistic.
Realistically optimistic, hopeful. And if there was one insight you wanted a listener to walk away with today on organizational physics from this conversation, what would that one thing be?
So many. Oh my gosh. One. For the rest, you have to read the book. It's the power of momentum and feedback.
Hmm.
And so, how can you really move momentum in a positive direction for yourself and
Mhm.
have those feedback loops in your organizations, in your personal lives, where it will enable you to be more productive? Go ahead
Mhm.
and ask your partner, is there something you could do more of or less of? You don't have to necessarily ask for negative feedback all the time. Positive reinforcement is just as good. Psychology tells us you need to be told what you're doing well so you have the motivation to keep doing it. And that's what momentum is. So I think momentum and feedback are so closely tied together in physics and in life. And I hope that everyone will go and learn a little bit about themselves through the people that they interact with, and then use that to be a more productive version of themselves.
That's awesome. You know, when we started this conversation and you said, Yvonne, how you doing? I said, I'm riding the waves. And you said that's a good thing. It means there's momentum.
Because that's an analogy I'm using in the book. When you're riding a wave, you're riding the momentum.
You're right. And I was like, that's good. That's good. Rehana, it's been awesome having this conversation with you. I've had fun having this conversation. My cheeks are hurted from just smiling all through this conversation. So it's been a
Mine
wonderful.
too. It's
Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate having you. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And again, can't wait for the 10th Change Leadership Conference.
I know.
In a decade, you've been doing amazing work, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Change Leadership Conversations. Be sure to hit the follow button, leave us a review, and share this podcast with your team or fellow change leaders, because leading change is better when we do it together.